Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session of OWAS Patna. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Manan Jan, where he will be simplifying for us offensive system and network security. Manan is a dedicated information security enthusiast who thrives on the challenge of finding bugs in network and web applications. His journey in cybersecurity is marked by a robust set of certifications, including OSEP, OSCP, CRTO, CRTE, among others. Hi, Manan. We are glad to have you with us.
Hi, Alia. Thank you for having me on this session today. And I'm very much excited to present on this current topic that's offensive security related to the network and the systems. So let me share my screen first, then I'll
Sure.
start. So good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll be covering offensive system and network security. That includes most of the part about the networks and the systems, how we can exploit them, or the post-exploitation part, as well as the lateral movement. So who am I? And let's discuss the agenda for today. Who am I? We'll be covering the Nmap scans, a quick recap of that. We'll be covering some pivoting techniques that's tunneling into the internal network, some NAC implementations and bypasses, as well as privilege escalation techniques and its definition and how can we can do it. So first of all, who am I? My name is Mananjan and I'm a security researcher. I mostly love to delve into the offensive side of security. I'm also a part-time CTF player. I'm a Web3 enthusiast. I'm a Cynic team member. And yes, I have some bunch of certifications like OSEP, OSCP, CRTO by the 0 Point, CRT, ECPTX, and other by the ELAN Security, ECPPT, and EJPT. So if you want to connect with me, you can connect with me over LinkedIn. And if you want to read my blogs and my articles, you can just go to the Medium in the link given below, and you can read it out. So let's have a quick recap of Nmap scan. Let me first tell you what is Nmap. It's a network scanning tool that is being used by most of us for identifying open ports, the services running on those ports, and what else we can do with that. So I've created a bunch of lists that is usually useful during a pen test or internal pen test or external pen test, and to validate them. First of all is the SynScan. Among them is SynScan, FinScan, XMAScan, NullScan, scripts and version scan, and the aggressive scan. I hope you all of like some of you might know about the two-way handshake and the three-way handshake. So I won't be covering that over here. You can read it about that on the Nmap itself. So talking about the SynScan, it is one of the stealthier scan that is being used to determine the target ports of the system and that are being open or closed. So for that, I've mentioned the tag as well. That's hyphen s small s and the capital S. So in case Nmap sends a SYN packet, I hope you guys know about this SYN and acknowledgement. That's a two-way handshake and three-way handshake thing. So SYN packet to the target, it waits for a response, and if the target, that is the computer that you are targeting to for scanning the open ports, it responds with a SYN or ACK packet. It is considered open and ready to establish a connection. It is usually helpful while bypassing some of the restrictions in the network. And I personally prefer using the scan along with the script scan and the version scan. Coming to the next one that I usually use in real-time scenarios during a pen test or red team engagements, that's FinScan, which is mostly used by the attackers themselves in order to bypass the deep inspection firewalls. So there are multiple kind of firewalls. Usually enterprises implement two kind of firewalls. That's deep inspection firewalls and a normal firewall. So it can be used to bypass other detection programs because it will always respond to the reset response on the closed ports, whereas it will ignore the packets of the open ports. For example, if you're scanning ports ranging between 1 to 1024 and some of the ports are closed, it will show it as a closed, but open ports will ignore the packet and you will get to know what are the open ports in behind the firewall. So another is the XMS scan. I barely use this one because it is nothing but to identify the listening ports. For example, if someone has opened their Netcat listener or any kind of application or thin client application is listening on current ports, for example, 9,000, 8,000, anything like that, it can be used to determine that and we can exploit using that. For that, already SynScan and the FinScan can do it. Next comes the null scan, which is basically a stealthier scan because it sets all the header values to null. So I hope you know about the packet structure, how it works, and how the packet is being sent. So there's a header value in that is being set, and it is set as the null value. through which the target response has take it as a null value, the open port, and we get to know about the exactly what service is running over there. It takes a lot of time. It is quite time consuming, and yes, you might face some problems while running the scan. So I usually avoid this one. And the next scan that comes with the script and version scan, it is basically all of us use this one, which is mainly used focused on detecting the version of the service running. For example, if there's a Apache running on the server on port 80, it can be used to identify which Apache version is used or the banner of the SMTP, something like that. As well as running the Nmap script simultaneously. Nmap has its own database of the scripts which can be used to identify the vulnerabilities. Last but not the least one, that is the aggressive scan. It is a comprehensive set of details about the target system, for example, service that is being used, the OS that is being used, and or as well as running the Nmap scripts in a single scan. So I personally do not prefer to use aggressive scan because it provides a lot of detection and makes a noisy activity over the network. I personally prefer using SynFin and the script scan. Coming to the next one, we'll be discussing about the pivoting and the tunneling that I have already mentioned. So let me first come to the point. What is pivoting? Pivoting is used to compromise is using a compromise system to access other systems within a network. For example, like most of us or a lot of guys have been learning about remote code execution, OS command injection vulnerabilities, or any vulnerability through which you gain access to a target system, either a normal user or as a root user. But in case for the it's a post exploitation activity when you get access to the network, when you have internal access, but you want to pivot inside the network, you want to access other machines inside the network that are present over there. At that time, we use pivoting and tunneling methods. Tunneling involves encapsulation of the network traffic within another protocol in order to bypass firewalls. So tunneling is nothing but a mechanism or a technique to bypass firewall, which is I would say using a pivot point. So for example, I'll take a live example. For example, we are in a network where we have a system that is connected to our own Wi-Fi network and a VPN network. VPN could be of a company's VPN or of any organization's VPN. And somehow attacker manages to compromise our system through internet or something. And then there's two interfaces. One is connected to the VPN. It could have IP of 10.0.1.1, and our internal IP of system 192.168.1.2, something like that. So what he can do is he can forward or tunnel all the traffic of my machine to his server, and then it's a basically reverse connection kind of thing. And then he can access anything that is behind the firewall or behind the VPN. That's the company's network. So it's a threat to the company. So for example, I've taken after compromising a machine, an attacker uses it as a pivot to scan and exploit other internal systems. So during a pentest engagement or a red team engagement, our main focus is completely on gathering as much as data as possible for exfiltration, or we can say compromising machines and the network that contains critical infrastructure. Could be database, it could be some servers. So our main focus is to compromise them, and usually companies never ever disclose or publicly expose these servers because it contains some critical infrastructure and critical information. So in order to compromise that, we always prefer to follow pivoting and tunneling methodologies and techniques. So here's the diagram end up depicting what exactly we does. The attacker who has an IP address of 192.168.233.129, and he compromises a Windows machine that has two interfaces, one having IP address of same range 136.136, and another to the internal network 192.168.1.211. So basically, this particular Windows 1 machine is connected to another internal network that is Windows 2. And there's another machine, Windows 2, which can't be accessed directly by the attacker. So what he'll be doing, he'll be compromising the Windows 1, he'll be pivoting using it as a pivot, and then going to the Windows 2 in order to compromise it. It could be DC, it could be anything. Let's move forward. So there are multiple ways to pivot into the network. I have depicted two of them over here and third in the another slide. But there are a bunch of tools that are available on the GitHub and even in the Kali itself. So for example, I've shown over here. First is the SSH dynamic port forwarding. For example, let's take an example. You are in a pentest engagement or a red team engagement. You're provided or given with a SSH login of the server. Like you have to perform each and every pen test using that SSH. If in the corporate, most of things happen like that for a pen test. So what you'll be doing, you can dynamically forward the port. That is, I've used 1080. You can use any port between 0 to 65535. There are, about that, how many ports are there. So for that, what we can do is I can access all the traffic that's inside this SSH using this particular port by implementing it with proxy chains. I'll be showcasing that over. And after that, what we can use is we can use SSH local port forwarding in case there's an IP address inside the network or inside a SSH or Linux server, and on that particular local server, there's some service is running. So this it's a live example because if you are solving some kind of CTF that capture the flags or any of the machines, you might have faced such scenarios where there's a service running in the internal network or in the or at the local host, and it can be used to gain root privileges or the privilege escalation. So for that, what we can do is we can forward that particular port to our on local IP, as what I did as this port number 8080 is, pardon, 8080 is currently open internally, and I forwarded all the traffic from my 8080 port to that particular SSH server. So I can access each and everything through my IP. That's 120. I'm in the local host. Coming to the next, we have multiple tools to pivot into the network. Chisel, Ligolo NG, SSH Shuttle. I won't be covering all of them, but yes, here's a list of them that you can use. I personally prefer using Ligolo NG and SSH Shuttle and HTTP agents. So what we can do is I'll be showcasing you HTTP agents. How can we use that, and what are their use cases? So let me take a scenario. First, it's a real-time scenario that I have faced, and I have exactly performed it in in the external pen test in order to compromise that. So it's a scenario of pivoting using HTTP agents. I've already mentioned what is pivoting, what is tunneling. Let's take a scenario. So, like most of you might be bug bounty hunters or heard about web application pen tests or web applications and how to exploit them. And it is quite possibility, like if you are doing a bug bounty, you are performing a bug bounty assessment or something, web application assessment, I would say. So your main target would be gaining remote code execution or uploading a web shell on that server or a website. So it's a huge probability like that particular website or a server is behind it's a kind of a reverse proxy which is accessing the accessed from the internet, that is accessed from the internally the port. So it's a scenario. I've gained I've gained RC and remote code execution and uploaded a web shell on a server, which is nothing but a reverse proxy. I've depicted a diagram over here. There's a client that sends a request name and it receives the response from any of these three particular instances that are deployed behind the Nginx reverse proxy. It could be any reverse proxy, but mostly servers uses Nginx, and which allows only HTTP traffic, and there is no internet connection in the internal network, which means only port 80 and 443 is exposed to the internet, that to via Nginx reverse proxy. So I'll simplify it for you. We have a network. I don't that's behind some kind of reverse proxy or some kind of firewall. I have a website that is connected to that particular network. I got access to this website, but I want to access internally in the network. What companies use as a countermeasure to that is they exempt it from the internet. So basically, internet is not available in the internal instances. For that, I'll be using a HTTP agent. I've mentioned the limitations as well. I can't use Ligolo NG, Chisel, Shuttle, or any other tool that requires to establish a reverse connection with the VPS over internet because internet is not available internally in the network. So in that scenario, I can, as you can see, this the first screenshot where I've shown the tunnel.jsp. I've exactly blurred the files names because it's a real engagement and I can't disclose it due to the ND and other compliance issues. So I've used a web shell and I can't disclose the web shell name as well because it's one of the private web shells. So I've used a web shell to upload tunnel.jsp. It's an agent that I generated uses Neore George. So I've already mentioned this name, Neore George, and you can see it over the GitHub anywhere. And I've generated it using that. So in the first, if you remember, like in the previous slide, I've just showcased the dynamic port forwarding. So this particular network or the website is only accessible through this IP address of the SSH. and I have forwarded that. I have used the proxy chains with that particular dynamic port forwarding port 1080. As you can see, my currently my listening address is 1080, like IPv6, and the localhost and 1080. So I'm using that as a SOCKS proxy. I hope you guys know about the SOCKS and the proxy and the VPN thing. So proxy is nothing but to access anything that is behind something but can be accessed directly from our machine. I'm simplifying it. I'm just saying it in layman terms. So I've uploaded the tunnel.jsp. That's the agent that I received, and it's only for 19.72 KB, not too large, because else it would have created some detections. So what I did was I just get inside the network by creating it as a pivot. As you can see, that's a particular command. George is nothing but a Python script. So I've uploaded it for the tunnel.jsp, and yes, a semicolon with JS. That's a extension bypass thing. So usually while uploading files or while uploading web shell, we may face something like that, like extension bypass or something. So for that, I use this extension bypass .jsp and semicolon JS. For the port I've mentioned 1070, like when it will establish a connection to this particular website or the server, and it will listen on the port number 1070 for the SOCKS proxy. So as you can see, after running this particular command, I got access, or I got my port number 1070 open for the SOCKS proxy. I again configured it with the proxy chains. Proxy chains is nothing but a inbuilt tool in Kali Linux or any of the pentest like OS that gives you ability to conduct a pen test, which can be used either to access the Tor. I would be saying it bluntly. I access the Tor or anything over using the SOCKS by using strict chains. Strict chains is nothing but a single IP to single IP connection. Random chain is nothing but multiple IP to single IP connection, and dynamic chain similar to that. So I've used it with the proxy chains, and you can see I've already mentioned it how I did over here. The proxy chains, and we added the port number that's 1080 for the SSF, and for another I have added for 1070. 1070 is what I have forwarded in the previous thing. Okay, give me a minute. Okay, you can see that. So after that, as you can see, I'm on my Kali Linux machine. Okay, I'm on my Kali Linux machine, and I can access I can access the Windows machine on my localhost IP 127.0.0.1. That was an administrator. So CraftMap, if you guys don't know what I did here, so I use proxy chains. I've already configured in the first screenshot with the HTTP agent in order to tunnel inside the network, and I use CraftMap exec. CraftMap exec is the tool which basically provides a functionality for executing different, I would say, different modules such as web dev or anything during a Windows assessment or even Linux machine assessment. So what I use is I try to access the SMB port that of the internal IP of that particular server. And since all the traffic was being forwarded through my localhost to that particular web server, I use the localhost IP and provided the administrator -h is basically nothing but the hash value or the NTLM hash. I'm not going too deep inside in that particular concept of the pass, the hash, and other things. So NTLM hash is nothing but a new technology LAN manager, which is basically hash is stored in our SAM file. If you guys know about the SAM file, and in the Windows system, it is in Windows System 32 and XYZ. So in order to access, we can perform pass the hash and gain access on that particular machine. And you can see I executed the command who am I, and I got the NT authority system, which means I'm nothing but I have the administrative rights on that particular machine without even tunneling into the network by using HTTP agents. So here's a diagram for that I've shown. Pivot NAC is nothing but but an alternative to NeuroGeorge, as I've depicted I have already mentioned it in the previous slides. So I have a local network. I establish a connection using the pivot NAC over the SOCKS. That is nothing but TCP over HTTP. If you know, HTTP is nothing but underlying TCP protocol. And there's a HTTP tunnel that is created over the web server. There's an agent. And through this particular agent on the web server, I can access the internal network. That's what I did over here. I access the internal network using the NeuroGeorge agent that I previously deployed or uploaded. You can see over here, I uploaded tunnel.jsp, and then access it using the Neorage George, Neorage.py, got the port number 10, forwarded all the connection through 1070, access it, and yes, I got access to the Windows system. Now I can get anything inside the network. That is, I can perform LDAP queries, or I can just perform proper execution on that, as you can see. And it's the, if you are in a bug bounty, if you're like focusing on bug bounty or something like that, I'll be very straightforward. I won't recommend you doing that because companies don't allow you to do that. But if you're in a red team engagement or a pen test engagement, you can definitely do this scenario in case there's an EDR or there's something that is blocking your agent. Usually, EDRs, antiviruses, they do scan the hashes or the IOCs for the like PHP, JSP, these kind of files, web application files. But sometimes these agents can be useful and needful for that, and it can help you bypass the restrictions and get inside the network. So let's move forward. We'll be focusing on the network access controls right now, and let me first discuss what are NAC, that is network access controls, and how it is being implemented. So NAC is nothing but a complete access controls that are implemented in any of the enterprise or organization to address issues such as authentication and the compliance issues. So for example, by the term I mean authentication means only authorized devices should be granted access to the network. For example, you're connected to the Wi-Fi, you're connected to anything using using the LAN cable or Ethernet cable, that's RJ45 connector, and only your device has been granted access to the network, such as an employee's personal laptop, and it contrasts a hacker's harmful devices should be blocked from the network. That's the main focus of the NAC, and yes, for the compliance issue as well, authenticated devices are granted authorization when they meet additional criteria that includes passing tests for current antivirus patterns and OS patch level requirements. So that's the main use case of NAC and why it is being implemented. There are big manufacturers that offer packages that include hardwares with necessary features. Even Cisco is one of them, and Cisco is one of the largest provider of them. Then there comes I'm just forgetting that name. Maybe I'll mention it afterwards. In some cases, these cross-vendor implementations are available through typically more limited range of features. That's actually let it be. And let's focus to the methods that are usually used for authentication devices. These are MAC-based authentication. MAC is nothing but media access controls, the physical address of your device. So it is being mapped. The physical address of your device is mapped to the internally by the sysadmin, and only when your device, which has particular MAC address A, B, B, C, 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 X, Y, Z, and when anything authenticated through that, then only the particular device will be allowed to access the intranet. The second authentication is certificate-based authentication. It is usually installed in enterprises like banks. I've seen it in banks. I've seen it in enterprises like large organizations. And these certificate-based authentication usually it's in WPA3 enterprise networks. Yes, apart from WPA2, there's WPA3 as well that is used for the authentication. Then there's an agent. It's a software agent. It could be a DLP agent, not DLP, but yes, an agent could be installed on the device, which will only allow to authenticate whenever that particular device is connected to particular range of IP address, or I would say to a particular switch. So next is the scanner, and a vulnerability scanner that scans a spatial zone in alternative that is being always run manually or automatically by the sysadmin himself. And these results are sent to the NAC servers, which are checked against the relevant policies. So these are the implementations of the NAC, that is nothing but network access control. Let's move forward. What are the NAC bypasses and how we can do it? As I've already mentioned, like MAC is one of the main thing, the physical address, which can be used to implement or map through the NAC, not network access controls. So there are bypasses for that as well. For example, there's a company client laptop, or I would say a desktop that is connected to the switch or a bridge. What we can do is, as an attacker, we can create a bridge, and then we can access to the NAC protected network. It could be a DMZ network, or it could be anything that is behind the firewall. There are multiple bypasses for that, but for now, I have used the three common bypasses, which will help you out in bypassing each and like most of the times in for NAC bypass. That's MAC spoofing, MAC, not NA. MAC spoofing. 802.1x bypass, and the Dropbox. So Dropbox is nothing but a physical Raspberry Pi 4 device installed with a Kali ARM image, which is being used as a attacker's bridge. I usually avoid this one because it creates a lot of a lot of noise in the network, because there's a probability around 100 or more than 100 people are connected to the same network at the same time, and it will disconnect all of them. So MAC spoofing is one of the good way, and 802.1x bypass is also a good way to bypass the NAC implementations. Let's let's move forward to the MAC bypass. So first step, I guess most of you have, if you guys were playing, I would say CS back in 2013 or 2014. So at that time, there used to be some there was cheat code, like people used to change their MAC address and then they used to play the games for, I guess there was something like that, the technique that was quite popular during that time, even in the time of Minecraft as well. So there was a map changer binary that we used to install in the Windows machine, in the Windows system, and we can just spoof a MAC address, and we can map that in order to bypass the blacklist and the restriction. So here's an example for that that is being used in the real engagements as well. So the first step is spoofing an unauthorized MAC address is to find one, which can be done by physically searching addresses on printer. So whenever you get inside an office or anywhere, you might find some open printers or IP phones and the labels. So those printers, so that it could be HP or it could be any printer, you can just access to that, and you can find the MAC of that printer because it already has access to the network, and you can spoof that. So it could be used by using the Wireshark to manually inspect the broadcast and multicast packets. I'm not going deep inside the broadcasting, multicasting, unicasting. That's another concept, and I won't be covering that. So which travels on the network and to obtain some MAC addresses in the traffic. MAC changer, I have already mentioned, it's already installed in the Kali, and it can be used to spoof the MAC address. And once there, cables can be swapped to access the customer's network. For example, you got inside a network, or you are allowed to do an internal engagement. It's specifically for internal engagements, not for the external engagements. And if anyone who's been deployed to the client side is performing an internal pen test or internal red teaming, might have faced such issues where you are not able to connect your own device to the to the client's network, and you won't be able to get some administrative privileges on the laptop given by the client. At that particular time, what you can do is you can boot a live Kali, or even in a VM, you can change the MAC address of the machine that is given to you by the client himself. For that, I'm using the MAC changer, and that's nothing but a demo MAC address. And for by the term ETH0, it's the interface or the of my Kali of or of anything. So then we reset the address to the permanent physical MAC that's in the MAC changer -p at 0. And there could be some errors because I personally face these errors while changing the interface settings, which is because the interface is already being used. For that, if it's something is being used, we can just put it to the down, we can change it again, and we can start it back. So for that, these are the commands that I have used. That's if down at 0. At 0 is the interface. It could be WLAN 0 in your case. It could be ENS 0 in your case. And in my case, it was ETH 0. I changed the MAC of my physical, or the physical address of my interface, and I turn it up. And yes, after that, I was able to gain access to the internal network again. I can perform Decaon, enumeration, or run any other tool through my machine. So next comes to the MSF V2 authentication. This is one of the authentication that is being implemented by the enterprise clients in their Wi-Fi network for authentication purposes, and it means Microsoft Chat V2 authentication, that follows EAP protocol, I would say, hierarchy. And this is the scenario that I'll be discussing over here. So the scenario is something like that. A client has asked you to perform physical breach or assume breach, red teaming, or internal penetration testing, and you're provided with the domain user ID. Domain user ID is Active Directory user ID that is on premises, and a laptop or desktop. There's a probability in client would have given you or would not have given you. and which is connected to the enterprise network or enterprise Wi-Fi for accessing internal network and authenticate to DC. DC is domain control or the highest machine, centralized machine in a corporate environment or in a corporate network, and you're supposed to proceed further onwards. So there are some limitations that you could have faced. There's a possibility that an EDR agent is installed. So, for example, the client has given you a laptop or a desktop, and you're asked to do a red teaming or internal assessment, but you can't use your own tools. It could be Nmap, it could be ZenMap, or any other tool like that. Just scan, mass scan, because all these tools have their own IOCs, their own hashes, and an EDR agent is installed, which is blocking all your tools and executable binaries. You are not so familiar with EDR bypasses. You are not a malware developer. You do not know what exactly you have to do uh, in order to bypass the EDR. The domain user that has been provided to you does not have local administrative rights on the given desktop and laptop. Yes, again, some tools require you for the proper installation, and at that time they want the UAC. That is, in order to bypass that or in order to have that, you need to have local administrative rights, and you do not have that. So in these scenarios, I've already attached a link for MS-Step V2 authentication and other authentication methods to read. And what we can do is, I basically did that, and it was a quite good way to do it. So I pulled out the Ethernet cable to the given desktop and plug it into your own personal or company's laptop to do the animation. But as I've already mentioned, there's a probability like NAC controls are implemented there. Even if you plug out and plug in the Ethernet cable or the RJ40 principal cable to your own machine, you won't be able to access the network, the intranet. And in order to bypass that, first scenario was the MAC spoofing. Second scenario is that I'm going to discuss. And the second option is you can use the domain user credentials to authenticate over the Wi-Fi. I've already mentioned like MSFV2 authentication is nothing but a WPC in an enterprise network where you are required to authenticate using the domain user and domain password over the Wi-Fi to access the internal network. So it's nothing but LDAP authentication over the Wi-Fi through your own machine in order to access the internal network. So for that, I've taken example of the scenario that I actually faced in one of the biggest organization in India, and it was a physical being scenario to a domain admin. Domain admin, if I don't know if you guys know about that, but domain admin it's a highest privilege user group in any Active Directory environment or on-premises environment in a corporate office or in a corporate environment. So give me just 1 minute. Yeah. Okay. So in this scenario, what exactly happened was, I guess for the reference as well, I have attached my medium block to that. What was the exact scenario was, I was given, like, I performed a physical breach. I got inside the corporate office of the client, and we were asked to get anyhow compromise a domain admin. And it's not an ideal scenario. We were not provided with any laptop, any domain user credentials, or anything through which we can breach or get inside that. So what I did was I initially compromised few of the Azure AD credentials, and I checked for the Wi-Fi, scanned for the Wi-Fi that are available over there. And after scanning that, I got to know like there's a one Wi-Fi that is using MSF V2 protocol, and it could be used to directly access the internal network. It was a complete, I would say, ideal scenario, but it was not so like that. So I used the like compromise credentials to enter into the particular network. As you can see in the first screenshot, I got connected to the VPN. It was my own machine, and I can in the second screenshot when I just look up for the internal domain name, and I got the access to the domain controller IP and other internal IP ranges. So this was one of the scenario where even though the NAC implementation was there, but I was able to bypass it by authenticating to the MSF V2 protocol using a legitimate user and the password. So here's the exact screenshot how I was able to gain domain administrator. So I'm not going to discuss it because it could be advanced for you or even for most of the people. So there's a tool named Certify which uses certificate authentication method over the LDAP, and there's a vulnerability that is there was CV actually, I would say, 0 day on the certificate server and on the CA certificate authority server, and through that I was able to fetch certificate of the domain administrator itself, and through that I was able to gain hashes of domain admin. From gaining the hashes, I performed the NTDS dump or the secret dump, that's also known as DC sync attack. And yes, that was the objective of our red team scenario and the red team engagement, and it was completed over there. Next comes the privilege escalation attacks. So in this particular slide, I won't be covering much about the attack scenarios, how to conduct that, because it would be a time consuming, as well as most of it, it needs some prerequisite knowledge as well. But yes, there's a definition by the CrowdStrike. A privilege escalation attack is a cyber attack designed to design to gain unauthorized privilege access into system. Whereas, according to me, the art of elevating the rights from a low-level user to a high privilege user by exploiting a vulnerability or abusing a misconfiguration is known as privilege escalation. And I've mentioned some of the techniques, some of the ways in order to gain privilege escalation on Windows or the Linux machines. For talking about the Windows, it could be abusing MSI files, the misconfigured services, scheduled tasks, if you know about scheduled tasks, or services, for example, printer services are there. There are multiple services that are being configured even when you sometimes run a exe. There are kernel exploits that are 0 days or the CVEs. There are relay attacks. So this particular relay attacks usually work in an AD environment, not in the standalone machines. Then there's DL hijacking. DL hijacking is you would have tested for in you would have tested for DL hijacking in thick client application as well, when you are just able to write the exactly your malicious DLL into the writable path of high privilege like process or anything that is running, and you are able to gain administrative access on that. Then comes the offline sampling. It's a long method, it's a very old method, and for that you need to have physical access to the system. You boot up your Kali or any Linux machine, any Linux pen drive, and then dump the SAM. From there, you find the hashes, and after finding the hashes, you perform part of the hash. There are delegation attacks. Again, it's a scenario where you are able to perform administrative privilege escalation in in an AD environment, in an Active Directory environment, or on-premises environment. And the password spray attack. Basically, password spray is nothing but a password root force attack, but you are spraying multiple passwords or the list of passwords against one user only. That's administrator. Coming to the Linux, there are kernel exploits, that is Dirty Cow, Dirty Pipe, and the Pawn Kit. So Dirty Cow, it used to be very popular in back in 2016 and 2017. Dirty Pipe is similar to that, which was I would say being exploited in the wild for in 2021 and 2022. And the Pawn Kit, it's a PK exec. If you know about what is PK exec in Linux system, and in order to exploit that, we use Pawn Kit. Again, it was in 2021, 2022, and still works. So what next we can do is exploit services. Yes, there are services that are running as a root user. For example, someone has custom Jupyter notebook, or it could be GitLab that is being run as a root user. And if we are somehow managed to compromise that, we are again the root user in the Linux system. Then there are SUID injectables, that is nothing but to files that have pseudo privileges, or I would say as privileged to run as a pseudo user. Then we have writable sockets. Sockets are even used for Docker escapes as well. So Docker escape, another topic is that can be used for privilege escalation. Then we can exploit the cron jobs, or the cron, or I would say the scheduled tasks in case of Windows scenarios. So cron jobs can be exploited in order to gain privilege escalation. We can abuse the writable path. For example, there's a writable path for it in case of Red Hat and CentOS system in the network files. We can exploit that, and we can gain again root user privileges. Then there are Steamux and screen sessions. For example, there's a user 2 or user 1 who has access to the who's a pseudo user, or who has access to the root password, and somehow that user has run a Tmux session or a screen session where they already managed to gain root. So you can take over that. Then you can again exploit the writable paths. Then you can exploit the capabilities. Talking about the capabilities, Pentester Academy and Pentester Lab has covered it like in a very good way, and you can read it over there, where you can exploit the capabilities too for Docker escape and for the privilege escalation methods in the Linux machine. So all of these things that I've covered right now is a post exploitation techniques. that can be used, and not the in terms of recon and enumeration. And it is ideally for internal engagements or I would say red team or pen test engagements, not from the bug bounty perspective. And I hope you are able to understand that. And I'm open to the questions right now. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Manan, for delivering such a remarkable session. We look forward to applying the insights you provided us today. We'll just open the floor to questions. I can see a lot of questions in the chat, and there's a lot of feedback for you. Would you like me to read it, or would you like to directly answer that?
Sure. So first question is by I can see Sumit Verma, and he said that I have mentioned that EDR was blocking tools under limitations. Strange that basic network NM tool like Nmap scan was not blocked. Assuming EDR was not used or misconfigured, which EDR was being used in the organization, if any? So Sumit, I'll like to answer this. EDR was blocking tools. By the term tools, I mean to say the binaries or the executables, not the network level activity. If you know how EDR works, EDR specifically works in gathering the IOCs and checking the behavior, not blocking the network level activity. And when you execute Nmap, it is being blocked. But when you're executing Nmap from different machine that does not have a EDR or any XDR, and you perform a scan, that is not being blocked in most of the cases until and unless there are deep inspection firewalls, there are SIEM tools, there are FIM tools, that is file integrity monitoring tools, SIEM tools. So, or any other, I would say, SOC analyst is sitting over the network. In that scenarios, that is not being blocked. And which EDR was being used in the organization, if any? So that EDR was Sentinel-1 that was being used. Next thing, in pivoting session, why did you had those limitations for the instance through Chisel that would reap the benefits as resource? No? So can you repeat that? Like I didn't get the question exactly. What do you mean by that?
As just a heads up, like you can also unmute and ask questions if you don't want to write it down.
Hey, hi Manan.
Hi.
Man, actually, I'm a network engineer, but wanted to pursue my career in cybersecurity. So, due to this, I have done few basic courses through Simply Learn, and I have also knowledge about Palo Alto firewalls. So, what
Okay.
are the things and what should I learn to get a job in this domain, and how
So
to proceed that?
it would be quite easier for you to switch from the network engineer to cybersecurity engineer because first, like you already know the answer. First, I would say to switch the job role is learn about the again basic things and map the scanning tools, the recon tools. And if you want to
Okay,
pursue some kind of course or anything like that, if you heard in the market OSCP, OSEP, I would not recommend in doing that in the initial stage. Just to go
okay.
to the Try Hack Me or Hack the Box. There are a bunch of machines over there which will provide you the insights about the cybersecurity, how engagements are done. That's a CTF again. So you can practice that. After
Yeah,
practicing
but
that, yes,
Yeah, but there are lots of domain in cybersecurity, so that's why I confused about earlier. When I completed the executive course through Simply Learn, I was started applying in all domain like web application, malware analysis, and VAPT, but and enterprise security also. But all these things, no one can give, no one can offer me just for knowledge. So I after that I completed. I have done Palo Alto certifications.
okay.
I have very good knowledge in Palo Alto certification, but right now I'm looking. Should I go for network security engineer as a entry gate of cyber security? It will work
Yeah,
for me.
that would be better. And specifically, if you want to go for the defensive side because you already know about the Palo Alto firewalls and other things. So it would be
Okay,
easier for you to get into defensive side of the cybersecurity. That includes the SOC monitoring, that includes SIEM tools, FIM tools, and each and every log analysis, monitor, or I would say threat hunting, threat intel. That would be better for
so
you. in my
So
opinion.
should I learn SIEM tools like Splunk and something like
Yeah,
this?
yeah, Splunk and there's Zabbix. These are good tools.
Okay, so
Keep learning, yeah.
I have to learn this before applying in SOC?
Yeah, and some KQL queries too, if you know about KQL language. So that would help you out in further, like in your career as well, because KQL queries will help you out in learning about threat intel or threat hunting. Not threat intel, but yes, threat hunting. That will cover your part of malware analysis and malware reversing as well.
But can you please clarify me in which particular domain should I hunt job search, like SOC domain or network security domain? Because both things are different, I think.
So
Both.
that's completely your choice. I can't guide you in that because I see it's all completely depends on your professional goals, your professional growth that you want to have. And if I were at your place, I would have gone for a network security engineer as my first preference and SOC
Okay.
analyst as my second preference, because in a network security engineer I might have to like perform the firewall configuration audits, the log analysis, and other things related to the network security completely. But in the
Okay.
SOC, as a SOC analyst, I would have to do like all of them, like not all of them, but mostly the monitoring of for the network or of the like applications. So that's a bit boring work for me. And if I talk about in terms of the money, like all of us want to hear, I believe SOC people, the people who are in the defensive side of the cybersecurity, will be able to sustain in this market more than the people who are in the offensive side of the cybersecurity. And SOC is one of them. So yes, you can contact me on the LinkedIn for more queries like that and for more
Okay, sir.
like guidance. Yeah, so Sumit Verma, like bro, can you
Am I
just
audible?
repeat that question?
Yeah, cool. So hey, everyone, great presentation. So
Thank you.
the question regarding the EDR part was specifically not with. I want to know the EDR because I've worked with a lot of EDRs as well. But
Okay.
apparently, for example, like CrowdStrike and others, they happen to have uh, rules like which can trigger it. For example, in map, you can specify a lot of tools under the whitelisting and
Yes.
maybe ported. That's why I asked that EDR question, why which EDR was being actually used, which was not able to detect it. Because Nmap is a
So
very basic network mapper tool, right? And a
yes.
lot of EDR still implemented as of date.
So for the like, if you have read that before, I've already mentioned it was Sentinel one. And second thing, I
Yeah,
didn't
I
use
got that.
Nmap in that scenario. It was a like Neurojot script, and Sentinel one was being used. If it was CrowdStrike, it would have blocked me and kicked me out after the network without even allowing me to gain initial access.
No, so there are two questions. The first one was with respect to your second part of it. I think MS Chat
Yes.
V2 when you was talking about. That
Yes.
was where you actually mentioned about EDR tools. If you can go back to that slide, that would be
1
helpful.
second. This one?
That's where that's where you used Nmap, right? And you're
Yeah.
mentioning here under the limitation for the EDR agents.
So
So that's very
limit.
curious.
Yeah.
Nothing
So
else.
for the limitations from this one, if you are able to see what I exactly wrote is, there's a possibility with the EDR agent installed which is blocking your tools and executable binaries. I'm not talking about any kind of network level activity. See, network
No,
level
no,
activity
on
can
the
still be,
sorry to interrupt again, but
yeah.
on the next slide you have used Nmap, right? So
Where
is this regarding the same engagement you're talking about?
s-
These two
so
slides
where is the
are
nmap?
coupled.
Like I didn't use nmap over here.
In the next slide maybe, or was it in the pivoting section only?
That was in the
Oh,
pivoting
for
section till I
example,
mentioned for the map.
got it. For example, here also you're using Certify, right? For certification
Yes.
maybe.
Yes.
So
Requesting certificate.
even in this case, in these cases, EDR tends to block. That's why I said I'm not aware with
But
Sentinel one,
I
but
guess I was
maybe
fortunate enough.
there.
I was fortunate
Yeah, yeah,
enough, and he didn't block me.
yeah.
But yes,
Probably
that's a
fortunate.
because see, in that scenarios there are LDAP queries that are being blocked. But there's a possibility like the team would have not configured it properly for blocking the LDAP queries, or the rule was not implemented. You get it? See, even if EDR is there, people are still able to run. I'm not sure, but they're still able to run the PowerView commands using PowerView.py, not the PowerView PS1 scripts.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a network level activity, and it's still being monitored, but not in that much detection as you execute execute a binary that is being blocked. It could be anything. I would say,
Yeah.
for example, you're trying to upload your C2 payload. It would have been flagged and kick you out from the network without even a single thought.
I think totally depends on what the organization's rules there are
Yes,
actually,
exactly.
because even in case of Singularity XDR by Sentinel-1, right? That happens to be there as a default, but I'm not quite sure if why I won't be able to detect. But yeah, cool if that happened for you. Regarding the privilege escalation part, sorry, the pivoting
Yes,
part as my second question was with
yes.
respect to
That was with respect to this
pivoting.
knowledge, George.
Yeah. Yeah, you have mentioned in the
Yes.
limitation as well that you were not able to use other tools. Any specific reason for it that you chose Neo
Yes.
Recharge?
Yes. So I've already mentioned it was behind the Nginx reverse proxy. This particular server, if you can see, Nginx was on the internet, exposed to the internet, but not the internal servers. So this Nginx servers basically, when I was able to access to the port 80, or I would say the website, and I uploaded the web shell, I got to know like the external IP is different from external IP that is shown over there. It's nothing but it is kind of a reverse proxy which allowed me to access the internal network. And if you know about socket, we use socket as a redirector in case something is that is going from 1.1.1.1, which does not mean like that particular server is being hosted on 1.1.1. It could be possibility scenario that server is hosted on 1.1.2. So that's a similar scenario. And if I would have used Livolo NG or Chisel, it required to have internet access on the machine where I got RC or the OS command injection. But on that particular machine, I didn't have any kind of RC or sorry, I didn't have any kind of internet, and due to that, I used the HTTP agent, which was like the NeoGeorge and the Pivot Naki over here,
No,
if you
so
can
with
see.
tunnel.jsp, you got a web shell, if I'm not wrong. And then
No,
through that,
tunnel.jsp specifically the HTTP agent
okay, got it. So
like
you're uploading it via what?
via web shell,
Over
via web shell.
via web shell. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
you have
So
uploaded tunnel.jsp via web shell, which is
web
running
shell.
over HTTP. So you could
Yes,
have uploaded any other, for example, Chisel as well, the binary through that, and
but
maybe you could strip it out with LD flags.
chis
So you
so
could have
chisel
got it under approx of 2 MB. So that would
first,
still be less.
yeah. So first of all, the first thing is chisel. Chisel is one of the most flagged binary, if you know, in case of any EDR,
Hmm.
or even a Windows Defender. That was the first thing, and you can see in this thing, it's a Windows machine, Windows Server 2016 that
Hmm.
accessed, as you can see. So this is the first reason why I didn't use Chisel. And second thing, it didn't have internet access. Even if I uploaded Chisel, there's a firewall that is blocking each and every packet that
So
is going through
Chisel
the
is a
TCP
Go
connection.
binary, right? Chisel is a Go binary. You can
I guess yes.
compile it via Windows, passing the Windows flag. So Go can be converted to anything, right? For
I'm not
compatible
talking
with
about
Windows
the
or
EDR
Linux, right?
bypass on that. I'm not talking about the EDR bypass.
I'm
If I
also
had
not
to
talking
do,
about that.
if I had to do, like for example, I got a question. You are saying
Mhm.
I would have uploaded Chisel and used that.
Yeah, yeah.
If I'll show you, like let me share my screen to the different one. So it particularly has 12,700 stars. I'm just talking about the stars. And in case of any like anything that is being publicly disclosed as this much, it would definitely have a proper, I would say, like detection rate. So for example, if I even download it and just upload it to the virus total, the Windows binary, most of the EDR or the antivirus would have flagged it. Do you want me to try that or show you?
Rio George is also flagged by
Uh,
that. I mean, you cannot judge
yeah,
a GitHub tool
let me just
by
show
the
you the
stars and
let me
everything.
just show you the
Windows Defender,
Neurojot.
by the way, blocks a lot of tools. It would also be blocked, by the way, if you
I
try.
can, if you have tried in your George, I definitely say it could have been blocked in case there's a web inspection or the IOC has been there. But in most of the scenarios,
There are
it's a
actually.
JSP. There, I know there are IOCs, but you can just change the exact content in that. There are a lot of things you can do with the PHP and JSP files, and I'm much familiar with that.
Yeah,
If you know.
familiarity is a different thing, but if I
I'll,
was
I'll I'll give
curious
you same
enough.
if you
Yeah.
want. Like if you are curious, if you want, I'll give you
Mm-hmm.
same scenario. You can ping me on the
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn. I'll give you
Sure.
a proper box with the Sentinel one configure, and you can try whatever you want. It will have a IS server, IS or any Tomcat server, and You can try your chisel, you can try Vigolo NG, you can try multiple tools, and you can then try this NeuroGeorge. Then it will be fine to know what exactly what exactly the detection ratio is, and what exactly it is being detected. In case of chisel, like static detection is there, if you know. But in case of other tools, it could be a
So,
behavioral detection.
so I think it all boils down to how you compile it, by the way. And in case of
You
RioGeorge, it's
can
a
compile it on
Python-based
your
tool.
own.
It's a Python-based tool, so that would have much larger detection rate. For Go binary, you can strip it out as anything you want.
That does
But
not even make a sense to me. Like Go does not have detection ratios,
I'm not
thus does
saying,
not have
see,
detection
see,
ratio.
you're talking about totally about the detection part. Why I mentioned this question was because you specifically mentioned that there is a limitation of using such tools.
I have already
So
mentioned
if
it was
yeah,
in
Okay.
my scenario
I think Sumit, you can take this up personally with
over the LinkedIn.
Manan,
Yeah,
maybe on
no worries, no
LinkedIn,
worries.
because yeah, we
I'll do
have
that. I'll do
other
that.
questions in the chat.
Cool, cool.
Okay.
No worries. Sure,
okay.
Manan, I'll take it over.
So,
Thanks for
sure,
the
you just ping
presentation.
me out on the LinkedIn. Thank you.
Yeah. So there are few more questions, Manan, in the chat. Okay. There's one question by Saurabh. Maybe we can take that up.
Yeah, which one?
If I wanted to start the bug bounty, then how can I start with it?
No, I'm not that much into the bug bounty and all. So, but yes, if you want to start with it, HackerOne and Bugcrowd is there for you. You can hunt on the public programs and then report the bug to them. And yes, Manas could answer that more than me, and a well good answer.
Yeah.
Manas, you can just ping to him
I have
for bug
actually
bounty related issues.
I have actually written whole lot of stuff on the bug bounty. So if you want to read, you can just go to website because see, since we are off time now, I mean, it's been a while. But yeah, if you want to start, you can just go ahead with write-ups, blocks, and see like what kind of bugs you want to find. And then if it fits you, like start with a couple of bugs and then move further with like critical and hard ones. Once you have that knowledge, apply it on bounty platforms. Once you get a couple of bugs on public programs, you get private invitations and you have more chance to find bugs. And that's a summarized answer of your question. Like there could be a lot of things more added into it, but you'll have to go through the all the stuff which is already available. So I don't want to repeat the same thing. But yeah, that would be a short answer to your question.
That's great. If you have any more questions, you can reach out to Manas and Manan on LinkedIn. Any more questions, guys? I think there are no more questions, but I can see a lot of thank you messages in the chat, Manan. I'll just
Yes,
quickly read
I
out
acknowledge.
for
Yeah,
you. Yeah. Thank you
I
for the
acknowledge all of
session,
them.
Manan. This is from Sahil. Nice to see you guide newbies like me. Okay, that's very
Yes,
sweet.
yeah.
Thank you for the session. This is by Monica. Uh, thank you, Manan and OWAS Patna team for the session. We'll be waiting for more such sessions, definitely. This is from Saket. And there's another thank you message from Pragati, Monica. Akshay Sinha is asking about the, will we have more such sessions? Definitely. Yes, I got some personal questions in personally to me. People were asking whether you will be able to share your slides
Sure,
maybe
I'll
to
share them.
us or on your LinkedIn.
Sure, I'll share it.
Okay. Yeah, there's a quick note from Alok. He's requesting you to show more cool tricks.
I'll definitely write it out on my Medium blogs, and you can read from there. I'll just post a link on that over here. You can read it.
Okay, is there
And
any
yes,
opportunity in OWAS Patna? Definitely, Karan, you can join us as a volunteer. We'll be more than happy to have you. There are more thank you messages from Shivani, from Alok. So I
thank you
think,
everyone. I like. I'm glad you loved it and you liked it.
yeah, and I hope you enjoyed engaging with the participants. It's good to
Yes,
see participants having questions.
yes, it was a good way.
Yeah. So I think we are good to conclude. Once again, thank you, Manan, and thank you everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you, Alia. Thank you for giving me this opportunity, and Manas, you too.
Thanks, bro.
Thank you once again.
Bye-bye. Have a great day. Have a great weekend to each
Bye,
and everyone.
everyone. Enjoy the weekend. Cheers.
Yes.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.